I am Hiral Mehta. I am a contemporary artist and the founder of my brand, House of Hiral, where I design and create lifestyle products. I would also like to introduce you to my new venture, which is God of Onions, where beautiful things unfold in each episode. Welcome to the God of Onions podcast, episode 1, where we are quite grateful to launch the podcast with Paul Antonio. Paul is an expert scribe and a well renowned calligrapher. His love for this form of art is evident in his work. He has worked for clients such as Joe Malone, Asprey, the Royal College of Art, and Eurostar. He also has a successful YouTube channel called PA Scribe, where he provides tutorial for aspiring calligraphers. Welcome, Paul. It is good to have you here. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Hiral.
I'm so sorry about the confusion.
I keep forgetting,
I think the
whenever I
Indian
do,
and the GMT and
whenever I,
IST time.
yeah, whenever I do stuff with people in India, I keep forgetting to tell you guys, you always miss it by half an hour.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. So, welcome, Paul. It is great to have you at this platform. It's an honor. I'm also going to be launching my podcast, which is called as God of Onions. Firstly, your work is absolutely stunning, and I can see that in your reputation. Matches your performance. Your work is very unique and exceptional. Basically, you have your own style, and that's amazing. I literally love the script and the work which you're doing currently. I think it's very interesting and exquisite. So my first question for you is, how did you evolve your craft in regards to the quality of the work?
So, the thing that I'm always really grateful for is that, I have a very particular mind. So when I started learning calligraphy, I taught myself. I started when I was 9, and I could see the structure of the letters. I wasn't sort of randomly practicing. Hi, OJ. I wasn't randomly practicing. I was very conscious of the practice. In years later, when I trained as a calligrapher, guild, and heraldic artist, I went back to Trinidad to visit my mother, and she said to me, I need to show you something. And I said, oh, okay. And she got these albums out, which I'd never seen. I thought, oh, I've never seen these photo albums. And she had kept everything that I'd written, all my practice, everything was there. And she showed me and she said, I need to ask you something. I looked at this and I thought to myself, this is not a doting mother saying, oh my gosh, my son's work is amazing. I looked at this and I compared it to the books and I thought, this is too close to what you see. And I opened the books and I started looking through them and I said, how old are these? And she said, you would have been 10 here, you would have been 15 here. I said, this is not a 10-year-old writing. I said, I have adult students who cannot achieve this level of accuracy. I said, well, how did this happen? She said, I don't know. And so she and I started talking about my practice, and I was able to look at the practice that I did, when I just started, and I started to break down the practice. And I didn't start with the letters. I always start with the basic strokes. I perfected the basic strokes before I moved on to the letters. And then I worked with the letters in their groups, which is the same way I always teach my students. I always tell students, never, ever, 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 under any circumstance, write out the alphabet in alphabetical order. Because an A is not like a B. And so you must practice them in their groups. And I could have seen this sort of consistent practice. So, moving from a beginner you can move very quickly from a beginner phase into a more intermediate phase if you are following a specific path and if you're working on one script. So many people want to learn 4 or 5 or 6 different scripts. They want to write with different tools, and that really affects the way in which you develop, because you're not focusing your attention, you're not concentrating on that one script or that one tool. And once you start to get really good at one script and one tool, you'll find that there's a lot of transferable information. So when you pick up another tool, you have that sense of accuracy that you've already incorporated into your practice. So that was a big part of my learning phase. I grew up in Trinidad. Nobody knew what
That's
calligraphy
lovely.
was.
Wow, I think at the age of 9, that's something amazing. I think I would have never thought about this at the age of 9 myself. And I think you're quite talented yourself. So I think that's amazing.
But
That's beautiful.
talent is one thing. But I remember when I was about 18 or 19,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to New York for a couple of months, and
Wow, okay.
I met a friend there, and he used to work for Tommy Hilfiger. He was one of the illustrators, and
Interesting.
he said to me, I know you're talented, I can see that. He said, but nothing can do for you what a good teacher will. They will take that raw talent and they will consolidate it and hone it and confine it into a really tight beam. And you will be stunned at what you can produce after training. And when you're young, you're really sort of conceited and you're like, yeah, I'm really good. Um, and when I came to the UK, I won a couple of scholarships and I went to university, and I was amazed at what my tutors took with this raw talent and what they were able to do with it. So it's not simply a matter of having the talent. You really need somebody to guide you. There are things that a tutor will show you that you cannot discover on your own. I always tell my students, I have a very particular way of teaching. And I always tell my students, I developed my courses online the way I have because we have a lecture on the history of the alphabet, a lecture on the history of the script that I'm teaching on the Sunday. So the
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday is the lecture. It's a lecture looking at the structure of the script from an historical, paleographical, manuscript background, which very few calligraphers look at. And once you have that sort of knowledge, that underlying knowledge, it helps to support the practice. And so this sort of system of teaching where, at the end of the workshop, I always tell students, I've invented this wheel, which I'm giving to you. So you don't need to invent the wheel. You don't need to go through 30 plus years of research and practice. You can start at the point that I am at now. And I think that's really important for students to understand. And I know it's really great that people want to practice and they want to develop their own style, but you must have an historical background first. Otherwise, you have no foundation. So it's not just about the practice. It's about consistent, good, accurate practice. It's then about correcting the practice. But you also have to spend time making notes about the corrections. What did you do wrong? Why does this not work? Lots of people write sheets and sheets of practice and they never correct it. What is the point in doing that kind of work? You're just wasting paper. You have to spend the time
True.
correcting it. And then you have to spend the time doing some research. And if you're just writing, it's just pretty letters. There's no
Agree.
structure behind it. So there's a lot that has to come together for you to get to the point where you're really putting all these little skills together to move you in a particular direction. So that's
Agree.
how I sort of moved from sort of beginner level into intermediate level and into advanced level works. And to being asked to being appointed one of the Crown Office scribes was really quite a big thing for me. And that every time those scrolls come in, they're really exciting because you're working on vellum. It's the same process the monks would have used historically to prepare it, and so it's really quite wonderful. So that's something that comes in 3 to 4 times a year. Some of the other projects that I've done in the past, I worked in a pyramid in Egypt drawing hieroglyphs. That was I think with choosing projects, you have to be really conscious about your skill level, what the project is going to entail, how long it's going to, how long it might run for, whether or not you actually have the level of skill that you need in order to do it, and not have it overrun, and whether or not you're going to enjoy it. And I think that's a big part of choosing a project for me. If I am going to, I really need to think through the project and think, do I really do I feel a connection with this client? Because if I don't feel a connection with the client, then I have to drive the project. If I feel connected to the client, there's a lot of interaction and they have an emotional and energetic investment in the project, so that it's not all coming from me, which is really important. The projects that we're working on now are really quite fascinating because they are my projects. So I had 3 pads come out with Rhodia. The paper is extraordinary to work on.
Love the way you work on them. I've seen a lot of videos where you work on them, and it's even though I'm not a calligrapher myself, it is so healing to actually look at the flow, the way you write it. I sometimes, I just keep watching your videos. I keep scrolling and watching your videos. It's really healing.
Thank you. I mean, it's great coming up with projects and with products. I always tell people, my ideas for my products and my projects, especially the new ones, the products that we have coming out, they're mine because I wanted them. When Rhodia and I were talking about these pads, they said to me, why do you want this? And I said, because I want a nice black paper on the market with really fine black lines, because it doesn't exist. So I always think about things that I want. And I know if I want it, then clearly other calligraphers will want it. So we have quite a few projects in the pipeline. The first one is gone to production, something called a lining template, which helps you to rule up lines onto pages much more easily, because calligraphers hate ruling lines. And so I thought, how can I make this easier? How can I make this simpler so that people can rule the lines and get writing? So it's the projects that I have in the pipeline now are my projects. They're things that I've come up with that I know will make a difference in calligraphers' lives. So that's moving from client-based projects to my own projects, which I know will help people.
That's really inspiring, and that is really interesting. So I think it's quite inspiring understanding your story with Rhodia. It's really very inspiring. And also a lot of artists, while how you choose your projects, where you see with the time and the skill level, as well as how you feel about that client. I'm sure a lot of artists or calligraphers who have just started their journey or are in the middle of their journey, I'm sure that's a good information or something to learn from while they are also handling their projects or when they get a new project themselves. So my next question is, how do you select your projects? I think you've already spoken about that. And how do you perceive calligraphy? Do you use it as a medium to convey emotion, or is it purely for the aesthetics and beauty of it?
So there are a number of aspects to that question. So I have
Mm-hmm.
a very personal connection with my craft. I've been doing this more than three-quarters of my life. I
Mm-hmm.
studied letterform history and manuscript history. So I have a very academic investment in the craft. I also have a very practical investment in the craft because I then went on to study calligraphy and heraldic painting and gilding. So I have this
Mm-hmm.
really interesting balance between my intellectual side of the craft and my
Mm-hmm.
practical side of the craft. And for me, it's bringing those two together, which is something that's very rare in a calligrapher to have the paleographical background or a paleographer to have the calligraphic background. So
Okay.
from a personal point of view, I mean, I have a great library. I can show you very
Oh,
quickly.
I can.
So that's so this is
Oh my God.
I think this is
That's a lot.
there's more.
Wow. And I also know that one of your manuscript is at National Art Gallery Museum.
Yeah, I mean, my I put my manual in the National Art Gallery because that's where I started my
Manual, sorry.
research with it. So the library is really important for me because I do a lot of research on manuscript history and letterform history. And that's both a professional and a personal thing I can quite easily spend. I mean, over lockdown, I stopped posting for a little while because I got sucked into the library. And I would come
Wow.
in because I was in the studio on my own. So I could come
Mhm.
into work, I would come in and I would do research and I would just I just fell in love with the research again. And it's so beautiful to have access to tools and materials that I cannot not only do the research in the manuscripts, but also cut some quills and do some ink testing. And there's tons of vellum and parchment in the studio to test, to actually try and work out what's happening in the manuscripts. So on a personal level,
Lovely.
that really brings me a lot of joy.
I'm sure. I'm
Um,
sure.
on an energetic level, because I teach Reiki and I teach healing and
Oh,
I teach
lovely.
meditation.
I never knew that about you. I think I did have an encounter with you at our gallery. I still remember that very clearly. It
Oh
just feels
yeah.
like yesterday
Oh my gosh.
when there was East meets West with Mr. Pallav. I
Yes.
remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was something.
It was quite a
I
special.
um I don't know what that was, but I think I'll surely speak more in detail with you personally. I'm sure I want to know more about it. So that's quite interesting. And
And
understanding that,
that's really interesting that you brought that up because that came about because Natika uh and
Xenia, Xenia,
I mean Xenia organized the
yes,
event.
yes,
But
yes.
when Natika asked me to do this
Mm-hmm.
thing, I I spent a lot of time talking with her about how we're going to do it, how we're going to make this connection between the two scripts. You know, I pride myself on the fact that I don't just write Western script. I learned to write Devanagari script. I taught myself to write it years ago because I just thought it was so beautiful. I taught myself to write Sanskrit. I can write in different languages because for me, it's about how the tool allows writing to happen, not just in Western script. And so being asked to do this, to do this exhibition with Achut was really quite interesting because we had to bridge the gap. And, Western script vibrates at a very particular frequency, as does Eastern scripts. They also have their particular vibrations. And I think
Agreed, yes.
being in India, you really feel
Mm-hmm.
the flux of energy in India because Indians are so connected to the earth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, I was there at the beginning of the Ganesha Ganpati, which was just insane
I saw
energetically.
that picture. Yes, yes.
I mean, I cried in that we went to the temple and I was a wreck and I had to go and teach afterwards because of being connected to energy and really being able to feel it is a big part of my calligraphic practice. And I try to bring that into the writing. So when you look at me write, the writing is very rhythmic. It has a
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful pace to it so that you can breathe slower and more rhythmically. And so there is a meditative aspect to the writing. So that's on an energetic level. And then
Mm-hmm.
of course there's the practical side of it. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing work for clients or I'm doing work for myself, or what does that work feel like? How do I perceive its accuracy and its veracity on the page? And I think, you know, for me, it's how, well, maybe 10 years ago, I used to hate this. I used to hate it when people looked at my work and said, oh, no, we didn't want to print it. We wanted it written. And I'm like, it's written. They're like, are you sure? This looks like a computer's done it. And that used to really upset me. And now I sort of think, you know, you, you're looking at work that is so accurate that um, your closest descriptive capacity for it is to compare it to a machine. So that
Wow.
starts to tell you that, you know, the work, for me, the work is, it's about accuracy on a level that surpasses what a computer can do, because the computer has this level of accuracy that's
But you
consistent.
can't feel it. When it comes from a computer, you can't feel it.
And so how
When
do we
you,
take that level and raise the bar? So that's where I that's so those are the different aspects. Those are the different ways that I sort of perceive calligraphy.
That's really interesting. And it's really interesting knowing that you're a healer as well, because I'm a pranic healer too. I
Wow.
have done Arhatic yogi I'm an Arhatic yogi myself.
Wow.
And I think even while I paint, I sometimes look at the energy, or I sometimes look at the feeling of a certain thing. I think knowledge is so powerful, like you said, that maybe it brings you to a journey where I think being an artist or calligrapher, as you're the master of calligraphy yourself, I think it's already being at a higher realm. You're already at a higher realm. I think it's the most beautiful feeling, I think, and it's a beautiful journey. So I'm sure. But when are you? I'm sorry, it's not amongst the questions, but I want to know, when are you coming back to India?
Oh, well, we
When are you
can't
coming
travel.
again? I'm sure right now not. Yes.
You know,
But
I loved being in India. I had such an amazing time, and there's so much to see. And my husband joined me after 3 weeks
mhm,
of teaching in in Mumbai and meeting some
mhm,
amazing people in Mumbai, and of course having some utterly insane food.
I'm sure.
And we left Mumbai, and then we went to of course we went to Ajanta and we went to Ellora, and that was
I'm
just
sure that's beautiful. That's
such a
yes.
shocking experience, and the caves still vibrate with so much energy. And then we went up to Jaipur, and we went with a group of people from the hotel to this morning
Mhm, mhm.
prayer where most of the people from the city go, and they pray at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and we walk through the flower market. And the morning prayer was, I was a wreck when they started praying and they
The
started
vibes,
moving around in a circle. I just started, I was shaking so badly. Our guide came up. He
the
said,
energy.
are you all right? I said, this is so, and he said, can you feel that? And I was crying, and our guide was hugging me, and he said, oh, I feel
Oh,
so blessed. And I was so moved at the connection that Indians have to the earth. So I mean, we were like, when are we coming back? Um, and you know, I have lots of followers in India, so
mhm.
helping them trying to sort of build their understanding of calligraphy is a big part of my journey. So when we're going to come back, I'm not sure. It just depends on when travel is open. And I think, lockdown has produced quite a lot of online classes, and so there are so many more tutors who connected with their students. Um, so getting back to India is a big thing for us.
Wow, I think that's quite amazing. But I'm sure that while you get back to India, please let me know. I would really love to meet you and
Thank you.
also understand about the encounter at Tau Art Gallery, as we had spoken about. Yes. And wow, I think you're a really grounded person yourself. I think if you weren't grounded, I'm sure you wouldn't have been getting those energies or the vibes which you really get at the higher realm. It's beautiful. And my next question,
Hmm.
what experience do you have with burnout and how do you deal with it? I think one of the days I had also seen your video where your hand was aching. And I'm sure that, with the passion you have for calligraphy, you must be, learning and writing and doing a lot of things with your personal projects. So I want to know, how do you get out of it?
I think there are a few ways to answer this question. I think that that you need to not only touch on burnout, but you also need to touch on illness. I was hospitalized with COVID at the beginning of the year,
Oh my God,
and
okay.
it was really bad, and I have to be really careful talking about it because the doctor said it was,
No. Mm.
when you have that kind of brush with something so serious. Excuse me. Um, you really struggle to talk about it because it's still so fresh. Um, I couldn't write.
Oh my God.
Couldn't write. I mean, I remember when I got home from the hospital. When we got out of the taxi, I couldn't. We live a short block from the main road, and
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe a 30-second walk. It must have taken me about 10 minutes to walk. And Tim was supporting me, and my legs were so weak. And I remember when I was finally able to go downstairs to the kitchen, the walk downstairs from the bedroom to the kitchen, I would run down the stairs. It could quite easily take 10 minutes. I was so
Mm-hmm.
weak.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in
Oh
the
my,
kitchen,
okay.
and we have a little list of what food we have in the freezer. So
Mm-hmm.
by each drawer. And I was trying to write with a normal pen, and I couldn't even write with the pen. I was so weak. I couldn't form the letters, and I started to think I won't be able to write again. And I had neuropathy in these fingers. I lost
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sensation because of COVID.
Okay.
And so when I finally managed to get into the studio, I did a video sort of talking about, I had so many messages from people, and I just wanted them to know that I was okay and I was getting better, but it would take a long time to post. And I didn't look at the video. I just did it. Tim said to me, "Well, go in, you do the video, and we're coming home."
I saw
It
that video.
it's
Yes.
it's a 10-minute walk to home. It took us 45 minutes. And Tim had COVID as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
took us
Okay.
45
Yeah.
minutes to walk to the studio. And we got in, and I had to sit for like an hour just trying to catch my breath, and then trying to remember how to set the phone up, and my brain wasn't working. And I just, I, I didn't even know how to do a live anymore because your
Oh my
brain is
God.
just, nothing's working. And I sat
Mm-hmm.
down and I did the video and I posted it. I didn't even look at it. And when we finished, Tim said to me that you can't look at your phone again. You're too tired. And then we had to walk back home. And so, it took another 45 minutes to walk home. We got into the house. I was exhausted. I had to have
Mm-hmm.
a nap
Mm-hmm.
for 2 hours. And then I thought, let me just look at the messages. And I had so many people say to me, I couldn't even watch this. I,
Oh my God.
I was so broken watching how ill you were. I couldn't physically watch the video. One woman said to me, the only reason I watched it was because I had to share in what you were going through because you took the time to make the video. She said, but by the end of it, I was a wreck. So it took me
I
like a
think even
month.
I could see half of it
Mm.
because I could not take watching the full video myself.
And then it took about a month and a half to come into the studio, and I couldn't physically write. I couldn't control the tool. So I basically had to train myself to write again, like how I teach my students. I went through the same steps.
Oh my God. Okay.
So, talking about burnout, I think it's important that we also talk about illness because there's so many people who come to calligraphy because of illness and they struggle to write. And I think, a lot of us, for a long time, we've not recognized that this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I started building this course, which, I'm going to do this online course, a free online
Mm-hmm.
course
Mm-hmm.
about how to practice when you're struggling with illness. And from a burnout point of view, when you're working constantly, you have to consider, are you doing your work or are you doing somebody else's work? Because doing someone else's work can really cause you to start to resent the craft because you're not doing it for yourself and they might be calling you and pestering you and demanding this and demanding that. And you start to resent this thing that you love. So you have to recognize that. And you have to take a step back from it. Otherwise, it will make a break in your craft, in your passion for your craft. And
I totally agree with that. Yes.
I
Sorry.
worked constantly for a long time, and I got to the point where I couldn't do wedding work anymore. I couldn't deal with crazy brides and demanding fashion houses, and nobody seemed to care for the fact that it takes time to do this. And in the end, I made a decision to stop doing that kind of work. I had to take a break. And in the time of taking the break, I was approached by Speedball to publish a manual on copperplate script. And so, when you're dealing with burnout, you also have to think, what can I do in this field that I love that is allied to my practice? So if you're accustomed to doing lots of writing for lots of people, maybe take a break and do some teaching, or maybe take a break and concentrate on a script that you've never concentrated on before. Maybe take a break and do research, because most calligraphers very rarely do calligraphic research and the history of the script and what the script is, where it's come from, where it might be going to. So by taking these breaks, it helps to reinforce your connection to the craft. If you're doing research historically, it helps to strengthen your knowledge base, and that dramatically changes your ability to interact with your craft. I saw someone wrote about mental health issues, and of course that's equally a huge problem, because if you struggle with depression, it's much easier to experience burnout than it is if you don't have mental health problems,
That's
because
true.
you can
That's
very
true.
quickly look at the work and think, I'm not good enough, because your depression is getting in the way. So being able to recognize whether you are dealing with burnout mentally because of being tired, or dealing with it because of an overshadowing issue of mental health issues is a huge consideration, because those are they're two different ways to deal with that. Get professional help.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to somebody. The calligraphy community is amazing. I answer all. If somebody sends me a private message, a DM message on Instagram, I always answer them. People are like, oh
Wow.
my God, I can't believe you answered me. And, you know, it's a lot of messages to answer.
Yes, that's true.
And you know that you know my mother said to us when we were quite young. She said, you know, you never know what somebody's going through. So
True.
always have
That's
a
really
smile on your
true.
face when you're walking down the street. Always look at people and smile at them, because that one smile could make the difference in their life. And it's the same thing that I apply to my social media. It devours my time because, you know, it means if somebody takes the time to send a message, I will take the time to answer it. If somebody just says hi, I just say hi back.
Say hi. Yes.
Um, but I'm always surprised at how much that affects people, because you know you then, if they're asking a question and you reply, they then send back a question. You can, you know, as a healer, you can sense energy. When you read a message, you can sense the structure of the energy in that message. And when the reply comes, it's like, it's bright. Oh my gosh, thank you for replying. And you know that that person is, you've not just helped them mentally on an issue that they're struggling with calligraphically, but you brought some happiness into their life. And
Wow.
that's another great way to deal with burnout, because even though you might be burnt out, the fact that you are taking your time to help others, it inverts the burnout. And so the burnout starts to, you know, you're not sitting there writing, but you can sit there looking at other people's work, typing. One of the other things I do, you know, Tom Ross, Tom is a good friend of mine. Tom is amazing
Wow. Okay.
content producer, you know, talking about community, helping to build community. He said, you know, one of the things that you should do is every day you should look at, you know, the first 10 or 20 people who have liked your posts, and go to their feed and see what they're up to. And, you know, and they're obviously following you for a reason. So to go to their
Wow.
plan, I do this. I go to my first 20 people, I go through their post.
Mm-hmm,
It
mm-hmm.
might be the first 40 people, because half of them, their content is private. So I would go to their posts and like things and look through things and make comments. And you get messages back from people saying, oh my gosh, you've made my week. I've not been having a good week. And this has really, really helped me. And, you know, we have the ability to do this. All it is just taking a little bit of your precious time and just touching somebody's life. And you have no idea what that's going to do to them. And so that's a great way of dealing with burnout, because you're using the time that you can't do the writing. You're using it to help somebody else. And as soon as you start helping somebody else, the universe sends you this sort
Blesses
of
you.
brightness. And you're like, oh, wow. So there are lots of ways to deal with burnout. And I you know, I come back to this. The best way to deal with it is to help somebody
Wow, I think that's so beautiful, Paul. I think you're a beautiful soul yourself. It's so
else.
inspiring. It's so inspiring for me, and I see a lot of people commenting in here how inspired they are. So I think that's beautifully said, you know, helping people, and you never know who is at which phase. So just being kind itself is something where you can help somebody. So I really believe in that, and I think you're an amazing soul yourself, and I'm sure that you are connected to your own soul. I'm sure with the way you say, the vibes which you get, and you know, with the energies which you get, I'm sure you're connected to your soul, and I think that's beautiful.
Thank you
That's
so
very
much.
beautiful.
I'm just running through these comments because, you know, once the live is finished, the comments now disappear, which
Yes,
is a
they
real
disappear.
shame.
Yes,
Um,
I think a lot of people have asked me that I'm going to save this video. Yes, I'm going to be saving this video, of course. I mean, it has to be saved. So, yes. So, my next question for you, Paul.
mhm.
Um, so, apart from I think I'm done with all the questions. I'm going to ask you a few of my personal questions
Okay,
now
sure.
because I am intrigued. Yes. So, I'm sorry, a lot of people must have asked you. I want to know when did you get the first project? I'm sure you've been working for more than 20 years from now. 20 years?
More than 20 years. I'm
More than
46.
20. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
My first project, I grew up in Trinidad.
Uh-huh.
One of the things about growing up in a developing country, in a small developing country. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 74, and so there's no internet. The number of books are just so limited. There was
Mm-hmm.
one book on calligraphy on the island, just one
Mm-hmm.
book. In all the bookstores, there was one book.
Mm-hmm.
And I saved so much to buy this one book because, you guys know what a difficult exchange rate is like. In Trinidad, the exchange rate was 10 to 1, and this book was £12.99. So, it was $150. And if you think a bottle of beer in Trinidad was 2.50, well, back then when I wanted to buy the book, it was $2. So this book could have bought you 75 bottles of beer. It's a
Wow.
massive exchange rate. I
Wow.
remember, and I loved books as a child, and I would go into the bookstores, and everybody in the bookstores knew me. And I would go into the bookstores, I'd say hello to everybody. It's like, this little boy, hi, hi, hi. They're like, and I was really careful, so they would let me touch the books, and if I picked a book that I wanted, they knew I would buy it. So they would put it aside, and I would go in every Friday, and I would ask them to see the book, and I would sort of look through it, and I'd give it back to them. And then, maybe after 2 or 3 months, I'd have saved enough money to buy this book, and I'd go and buy it, and they'd be like, "Oh, you bought the book?" I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody was really happy for me. Um, and there was this one book which was more expensive than any other book I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
buy. And then I opened the book, and I remember, I still have the book. Where is it? It's over there. Yeah, it's over there. And I opened it,
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
and the double page spread of the book was a double page spread from Albrecht Dürer's work for Maximilian I. And this manuscript made me decide this is what I want to do.
Wow.
It
That's
was
quite
such
inspiring.
it was such a magnetic experience. It just sort of grabbed me. And I did some lives. Tim said to me, maybe you should do some lives about your life during lockdown. And I did these 4 lives, one about how I came to calligraphy, one about my studies, one about my professional work, and one about the manuscripts, some of the books in the studio. And the live about my life was really hard, and it was very difficult not to cry, because it's really tough sort of talking about your life, especially when you've had lots of issues growing up, and my father was really abusive, and so just having to sort of deal with those emotions again and those memories.
Mm-hmm.
And Mummy is one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. She's so lovely and full of love and gentle and caring, and she raised 4 of us on her own, and she fought to make sure we had an education, and so when I started doing calligraphy, she was very encouraging. And little island, if you do something on a little island, you are not just sort of okay at it. You are the best at it because nobody else is doing it, right?
That's
And
beautiful.
and so I got asked by this big oil company to do these scrolls. I'd never done a scroll before. And they were massive scrolls. Even today, I very rarely get a commission that size. And so this is at 15. I had 8 scrolls to do. I'd never written out this much text in my life. And I was really conscious of the structure of the text. And so I I very quickly had to up my game. I had to figure out how to rule carefully. I had to figure out how to write accurately. Um, and true to form, they always need it yesterday. So that was my first real sort of that was my first commission.
Wow.
This absolutely
Wow.
massive project. And I can still see what I did, and I sort of look back on it, and I think at 15 I would have done this and this. But I am still quite proud of those 8 scrolls, and yeah, it's really quite something, that first project.
Wow. I think your first project is quite inspiring as well. Yes. So I think I don't have any more questions. I think if anyone from the audience would like to ask any questions to Paul, anyone?
I see some great people on. Rachel's on, OJ's on, Sanjana's on. So Sanjana was on a talk on Sunday, and I just want to talk about this a little bit.
Sure. Yes.
And she was talking about Western calligraphy and how
Mm-hmm.
lots of people in India are very keen to learn Western calligraphy. And I left a comment saying that it's great that so many Indians want to learn Western calligraphy, but what breaks my heart is you guys have some amazing scripts, and the drive should be to want to learn Western calligraphy alongside your Indian scripts. And so many Indian scripts are disappearing, and nobody's learning them, and nobody's practicing them. And there are very few teachers. There are people like Achut and Vipul, and I think Ash does Devanagari script as well.
Yes, yes.
Why are you concentrating on a Western script when you have all of this magic in India?
Wow, very well said, Paul. Thank you so much for saying
That
this.
breaks my heart. It really, really breaks my heart. And you have Vedas written in Sanskrit, and you have some amazing content in India. So I think for those of you who live in India, for those of you who are Indian, and you want to learn Western script, you need to make a decision that you cannot just learn Western script. You must also learn one of your Indian scripts.
Yes,
And
totally
I have some
agree.
great books from, where are they? I have 6 books, little booklets
Wow,
on Indian scripts, and they're available. You can get these booklets.
wow. I think, I feel like getting into another live, just focusing on the Indian script books now. Now
they're
that's
so
intriguing me.
beautiful. They're so beautiful, these Indian scripts. Where are they? Where are the books? I mean, I took them out just recently because I wanted to go through them again.
Wow.
But there's a lot of scope.
That's okay if you can't find now, but if it is possible, I would love to do another live just focusing on the Indian script, but only whenever you're free
I think
in the coming months or whenever. I just took an opportunity.
I'm glad that and I can still at this going, wow, yes, well said.
Yes.
It's you as an Indian, it's your responsibility to do this. I can only suggest it. Devanagari script is so beautiful. I love it. I spent some time, you saw the exhibition. When we were putting the exhibition together, I thought, I wonder if they've ever seen this done with a ruling pen. And so we had that big piece done with this beautiful ruling pen, and I wrote out some Devanagari and ruling pen script. Which was
I saw that. That was beautiful.
Everybody was like, wow, this is amazing. And I said, yeah, but you need to know the script in order to do it.
Agreed.
And so
very well, yes.
I would love, I'm grateful that you guys want to learn Western script, because that's where my base is, obviously. But if I can learn to write in Sanskrit and I can learn to write in Devanagari, you can more than learn to do it. So,
True, very true.
your posts, for those of you who post Western script, for those of you, and this is, and I'm being really harsh with you here, but those of you who are Indians and you live in India, your Instagram should be a Western script post, an Indian script post, because you have to
It's the
fight
cult.
for this.
Yes. Yes, I
Otherwise,
agree.
you're going to end up in the situation that we ended up in the West. We lost our tradition of calligraphy. So
Okay.
at the beginning of the 20th century, Edward Johnston had to go digging into manuscripts. He looked at the Ramsey Psalter. He had to figure out how quills were cut. Yes, there was the Worshipful Company of Scriveners. There were Crown Office scribes. There were scribes at the palace. There were scribes at the College of Arms.
Wow.
But they were only scribes doing work at a particular level. Edward Johnston had to go back into the manuscripts, figure out how quills worked, figure out how ink worked, how to prepare vellum, because that was lost to the general public. And you are in this situation where you can lose your Indian scripts because you are too busy focusing on somebody else's script. Great, learn the Western script. You have to take responsibility for your own scripts. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. You are going to lose those
I
scripts.
agree. I agree.
And you have some great practitioners in India who do Indian scripts. Seek them out. They should be featured on your Instagram.
I think I would like to add a point to this. I'm going to be featuring someone as well who's an Indian calligraphy artist. I'm sure you must have heard of Kamal Jain.
Yes.
I'm going to be interviewing him very soon. Yes.
I would really impress upon you guys to, maybe start a hashtag, where it's, Indian scripts, or you say hashtag Indian scripts, hashtag Devanagari script. Now, obviously, the Devanagari script hashtags already. But contributing to that would be amazing. It would be really quite special to get that flowing. How do you apply Western calligraphic techniques to Indian scripts? So there's a
I think
lot of
merging,
scope.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful, yes.
All right.
So I think, as to what you've said, I would also like to add on to it that, as you said that, a lot of scripts have been lost. And I had also seen one of your video where you were actually explaining a script which was so interesting and beautiful with very small writing. I don't remember what script that was. But to speak in a broader perspective, I think there are so many beautiful cultures where all of us belong from, and there are so many genres that we can learn from. So if we are going to, as you said, if we are going to miss out on the Indian genre and just drive towards the Western only, or any other apart from Western, I think we can somewhere lose out our culture, and the learning and the knowledge which has to be passed or to be known to the wider audience, that will be lost. Because every culture, as you said, I'm just repeating what you said, that, the Sanskrit and the Devanagari script, and even the other scripts which you've said apart from the Western ones, are so beautiful. Understanding their history, understanding where they come from, I think I can literally feel the vibes right now. I don't know, but
even
it's beautiful.
I've been talking about this in the last couple of weeks. Even with our Western scripts, there's so many people doing modern calligraphy, and they're not taking the time to look at where the modern calligraphy came from. Modern calligraphy evolves out of pointed pen scripts, principally Spencerian and copperplate script, more copperplate script than anything else. you can't do modern calligraphy without knowing a little bit about copperplate script. And because people are not being responsible in their learning, because they're not being stewards of the craft, that information is problematic because, like I said earlier on, it's not just about pretty writing. Having that background really helps in consolidating, but more than that, having that background really ensures the longevity of the craft. And that's the key. Because if when those of us like me, when my age group, when we die, what's going to happen? Who is going to have that information? Are you guys going to have to relearn everything that we knew because you chose not to learn the historical context? So it's really important
Wow.
that we hold on to this information. And similarly in India, you're losing scripts. Every month you're losing scripts. There's some little old woman in a village that's very difficult to get to, and she's the last person who speaks that script, that language, that dialect, and it's never been recorded. And once she goes, that's gone. So there's a
Wow.
lot. I think there's more to be done in India around Indian scripts than there are to be done than there is to be done in the West, because we went
They
past
have
that
been.
threshold and we lost it. You cannot
Okay,
lose
sorry.
those. You cannot lose
I agree. I agree. I think beautifully said.
Yes.
So someone's asked, which Indian calligraphy, which style of calligraphy do you prefer the most? I think Vimal Parmar, I know him. He
I
had
you
asked.
know it's the same thing with Western script. People say to me, which is your favorite script? When you get to a certain point with writing, there are no one script is better than the other. Each script has its own fascination, and it's about how to figure out what that fascination is to connect it. Because if you start
That's
thinking
true.
one script is better than another, you will never want to progress from it to something else. So,
That's true.
all right.
So I think as much as I would love to have you and ask you more questions, because with every passing time, it's getting more and more interesting and getting me more and more intrigued. But looking at the time now, and I'll have to now finish this really fast. So I would really like to thank you, Paul, for as you said that you're always available in your DMs, and as you're always. I mean, I have a lot of gratitude that you actually are here for my life today at my platform. It's an honor.
Thank you very
So thank
much.
you so much for being here, Paul.
Thank you so much for being here. You can find Paul Antonio and see more of his work on Instagram at PASCRIBE. On Facebook, Paul Antonio Scribe, and his YouTube channel is PA Scribe. Thank you so much, and tune in next time to see which artist we interview next. You can find us on God of Onions on YouTube and Spotify, and at the rate God of Onions, which is GOD_OF_ONIONS on Instagram. Thank you so much, guys.